Hello.
Hey, Drew.
You caught me red-handed doing a work. I'm going to turn on sharing. It's a bit scary. There's a new build to kick off our discussion around the whole issue of, hang on, mirror my view. Let me just do that before. Okay, I should probably stand up now. How are you guys?
Doing
Good.
okay.
Just got back from New York. Had a good session with Meta and Pico. That's the company that makes TikTok makes a VR headset series. And with
Interesting.
Google and all of the people who work on the Quest browser that I was working with have retained their jobs after the 8,000 strong layoff. So
Yeah, that was
really
pretty horrific.
Yeah.
Gotcha. By the way, I don't know who is on not mute, but there's some background sound. If you're not talking, if you could mute in the beginning, please. Oh, that's better. So good to be home, or was New York just too exciting?
I really like California weather, and I really like doing the work that I do. But it was interesting to see. I'd like to go visit again. I'm have an engagement with the Met, and so I would like to continue that. And I didn't get to go see Professor Perlin, but I would like to try to do that at some point. And there's some other academics in New York City that I'd love to catch up with. There's a fellow at the New School who does robot psychology, where the psychology of robots, not the psychology of.
It's a little hard to hear you. Can you see who is not muted? I can't see that.
No,
now.
it's me. It's people in the background in my
Oh, okay, fine. That can't be muted. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, no, New York is definitely a vibrant place. That's for sure. You guys can see the screen share, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is Doug's 62 paper, which is easy to forget how insanely big it is. It's massive. Massive,
Yeah, it's
right?
quite an undertaking.
Yeah, so just crazy. So, of course, we have the working outline. And as most of you know, Tom, you definitely know. Who's here, by the way? I can't see. Tom and Peter, right?
No, Tom and Brandel. That's it.
Oh, I thought I heard Peter as well. Okay, so you two. So we are at the core audience. Cool. Right. So the thing that was supposed to work today, which they have misunderstood, when I tap on headings, the thing that it says highlight now is not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be sections. So that's a bit annoying because the whole thing, Jeff Norris at Apple said that this doesn't really connect with the nodes. So I've been dealing with that. So if we now go to the map, so Brandl, I'm not sure who you've seen, but we have a free floating toolbar for everything that isn't the document. So I'll put I'll put it on here, up against the wall.
Oh, yeah.
So now we have a lot of stuff. So if I now select sections, okay, let's try to, they're all overlapped now. So these are all the sections of the document that's defined by heading body text. So let's do a layout, alphabetical, depth, long. So here we go. This is the entire document. It's a bit long. And this is what we need to discuss today when I come out of the headset. They're also too big. So let me see if I, without crashing everything, if I can.
What are the black boxes?
That means selected, and very perceptive, Tom, because they've changed appearance today. I'm experimenting with surrounds rather than only black. So this
Are
is
they
also
section titles or page numbers, or I can't read
sorry.
them?
That's exactly what they are. This is a heading, process structuring.
Got it.
Doug had it as heading 5 because in order to do these manipulations where we have them as this, or let's just distribute horizontal. So we can do this. They have to be numbered or alphabetical. It could be A, B, C, D, but if they're not, then the system doesn't know the order of them. Is that clear to both of you? I'm not sure if I said that very well.
I think
Yeah.
so. I mean, the hierarchical sort of enumeration also is an interesting feature of it that I think helps ground it too.
So I'm just going to do here, show
Instead of
sections.
highlights, you've made lowlights.
Yeah, that it's a reversal, yes. But okay, so what I've done now is kind of important. What we have now are only the sections. So the whatever nodes are concepts are gone, right? So let me just deselect and then open. So that part of the issue today is the ellipsis here. Obviously, that means there's more in that section. How should we deal with that? Should this ideally be scrollable, which would interfere with this, the movement? Should it be multi-cards? Should it just be really tall? Any initial thoughts on that?
I think it
I mean, my
depends on the
first,
depth of the ideas. But go ahead, Randall. I'm sorry.
yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I'm with Tom there. It, it depends on the depth of the ideas. It also depends on what you need to be able to do. So if one set of things in one of these sort of paragraphs is, you wouldn't want to compare two parts of it, then you only need one view that sort of multiplexes to have, the multiple pieces of it. But pages are good for being able to compare the two pages, to be able to look side by side. Structure is good to be able to see at a distance. So I know a lot of people really like fully justified stuff, but I actually prefer ragged rights because they give a page more, they give a something a more visible, tangible structure at a distance. The
Right.
fact that you have these multiple paragraphs and they have very slightly different shapes. So I think that there are sort of different cues that you can exploit by virtue of constructing things in different ways. And it also depends on overall the overall number of implied number of things that you're going to do with them. So, a drop down is appropriate for a certain number of options, and a radio button set is more appropriate for a different number of options. So, if you have three things, then I would argue a radio button is more important, is better than a drop down. But uh,
You're bringing up a lot of cool things. We will address all of them. Let me just show you this first of all.
sure.
Look what I'm doing, Brandel. This is akin to your mural.
The frame rate is low enough for me that I'm not super able to tell what it is you're doing.
I am pulling the whole entire thing
Uh-huh.
to the right.
Oh, cool. So there's a sort of a vanishing point, and then I see. Yeah, if I look at the numbers on it, then I can see that they're changing, but I don't get any animation
Yeah,
per se.
that's horrible. But yeah, I can lift and move the whole. Still no animation.
It's jerky, but you can
Unfortunately,
sort of get a sense.
Okay. Here it's medium. Okay. So could you please?
Is it smooth with you when you're
It's
looking at it? Is it
it,
completely
it's
smooth?
it's mostly smooth, but it's a massive document, so there's a
Yeah.
little bit of lag, but it's not really disruptive. But it's still, this is too much information, even if it was smooth. So that goes to what Brandel was just talking about, what should be seen in different views. So, if I close all of them, this is smoother and more
yep.
manageable. But right now, they are just little black things. You cannot get a sense of any of them by this view. But what I want to do while we're still here is just show you what we have. So if you open it up, you just have a beautifully rendered, because it's vision. I mean, look at this. Right? It's incredible. But
Yeah.
if you open it and tap, that's when you get three options. And when you're talking about the different kinds of menus, Randall, I kind of agree with you, but I'll tell you in a second why I only kind of. So now all selects all of the same. So if I've touched a section, it selects all sections. if I had done if it was a node, a defined concept, and I do all, it would select all of those. Actually, so if I go to this, and then I deselect, so this here, select, open, same kind of options, ask it. If I do all, oh yeah, this one has got a structural problem. But here, if I click edit, I get the full normal edit dialog.
Mhm.
But if I select a section and click edit, it opens the main document to the right section, so I could edit properly in situ. To edit in this little thing could be nice, but then you have kind of a synchronization issue.
Yeah.
The other things worth talking about when it comes to the menu, which I refine often. I've moved things so much back and forth. I think my programmers have cause to hate me. I realized the other day that this is gestural. You know, we did some things under Sloan, pulling through circles and all those really cool things. This is not that far away from that, because when you get used to it, right? If someone is looking at me from the outside, they see me doing this, 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 right? So it becomes a gesture as well.
Yeah.
And I find that a really annoying surprise, because this is really boring, right? This is not what we dreamt about when we started this, is it? But generally, it's actually, when I'm working in here by myself, it's very, very fast. I mean, tell me something to do. Test me, people.
Find the passage where Joe is first mentioned.
Yeah, okay, select, find, Joe. No, Joe. That's not what I wanted to. Okay, so I guess, well, we're dealing with the find, but it's only searching for a heading. So let me just do symbol. That's not what I meant. Symbol. Hang on. Okay, you see
So
this?
it's just searching the headings, in other words.
Currently, yes, but that's a matter of thinking it through. But at least we have that. And if I now go to focus mode, as you've seen before, everything that's not either selected or connected is gone. And that is dynamic. So if I select something else, and that's selected something else. So it's a very clean way to navigate through the space. So that's kind of my comment, Brandel, on radial or other menus. And what is really fascinating here, at least to me, I think maybe to you too as well, is where things should be. So I had layout here in the beginning, and it is now again. Accidentally, it was moved over here. And doing this with a human arm, going, if you're right-handed, going left, is less effort than going the other way. So that comes into it now. Like when you design context menus, where your pointing finger goes really counts to where things should be, right?
What if you're left-handed going right?
This should be reversible, but the reason I chose to put layout here again is quite simply that's where it is on the Mac. I don't want to confuse my users. But the kind of the insight for me is, even though this is just a bar, some of them are menus, some of them are commands, like these two are commands. There is actually, because they're large, it's this big. There is a lot of hand movement, so it becomes gestural nevertheless. Like if I want to select now all the notes, I don't have any notes, I just added that. Select all the sections, boom, I know where that is. And select persons, that will be category person. I'll have to do show all, select category person. It's really efficient. And even though I don't like a lot of the visionOS huge things, this is an example where I think it makes sense.
By the way, I think your background is fake. I mean, there's sunlight in England. That's obviously not happening.
It's 35 degrees Celsius today.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's even hotter than here.
It's the warmest it's been since 1944, apparently.
And that's when the city was on fire.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's why I've been stressing a bit today. I had to go pick up my mother. She's sitting in the aircon in the other room.
Uh,
So that
yeah, so
was, yeah.
couple quick thoughts. I don't suppose you can. It's very black and white, so I don't suppose that there's a color highlight border something that you could make, because color is another way of quickly distinguishing different kinds of visuals. So if I wanted to mark every chunk where Joe's examples are, for instance, right? Because he pops up again and again, how would I do that? If I were to, and I may not want to highlight. I may just want to put a color around the box so that I can see from a distance, okay, all the pink boxes are over here. So I want to go look at those, right? Shape is another way of handling that. Although there are limits to, since text inevitably likes to be square, uh, putting it in weird shapes can be a little bit tricky. So, you significantly reduce the amount of text you can put into a circle or a triangle.
Those are the types of things that I've been working on significantly much in the Mac version.
Mm-hmm.
So and when it comes to the search type thing, I think we need to do something like that. But for instance, if I now, of course, okay, let me just do, if I just do Command F and type Joe, then it'll contract the whole document. So only the paragraphs with Joe will appear. And Joe is bold. So I completely agree that that will be useful in that environment as well. What I'm trying to deal with also to help you get an overview, I mean, this is 39,000 words, right? There's also the new, if you look all the way at the bottom, so under outline now, where you have a normal outline, you also have this new thing. I think you've seen it, Tom, but click on it, it's overview.
Mm-hmm.
And so overview has a different function from outline. Outline is more for navigation. Overview is to figure out where is what. So in the overview, you have the option to choose what should appear. Maybe bold text is of value to you. Maybe it's not. We've added the option to see the defined concepts. So it may have the right keywords, but if you've defined concepts, they're important to you. So then you know what you're looking at when you click through it. So when it comes to the visual, no question that must be done better. And yeah, I wonder if other than colors, because humans can only see roughly 7 different colors unless they're next to each other.
That may
It's
be all
so
you need. That may be all you need. The idea is that you can pick out things from a distance. One white square looks like any other white square if it's all far away.
But
Right.
it depends. No, not but. And it depends what kind of differences we care about. Because if it's currently, the simplicity is if it's a person, it's an italic to look like a signature, which is great on a flat screen, not great in space. You can't really see it. So if we want to do the visual differentiation by category, I think it's more achievable. But then we have the other thing of kind of highlight where Joe is. That becomes a different level of dynamic differentiation. I mean, that could be maybe. Oh my God, 10 years ago, I had an idea for a mind space like this, where instead of doing a search, you would just add a new thing. So you would write Joe, put it in there as a node, and then it would naturally go to everyone else. We could have that in this environment too. So you have notes, defined concepts, but also essentially tiny search queries.
But I mean, as a researcher or writer, a lot of times I'm interested in clustering things. So I'll be looking at a document and I'll say, okay, I can use this in this chapter or this piece, but I want to keep this, and it's not the same thing, but I want to put it over here for another piece or another chapter or something like that. And to be able to go in there and quickly find those things again is, right now I use AI for that. I mean, I have going to I was doing that this morning. I was saying, okay, what does Michel Foucault have to say about labels? And I had it search through all the Foucault stuff I've got in my library. He doesn't really use that word very much, so you have to sort of play with it. But the point is that, yeah. So, but I'm looking for clusters of things. It also pulled out data from other things saying, well, Foucault doesn't talk about it, but so and so does, or whatever. And here's how that might relate, or something like that. Because I'm writing a piece about labels this week, or about certific certification. Anyway,
I was just writing down the nodal thing of that.
yeah.
Um,
So
okay, well, let's go through a little scenario to help with the thinking. So next week, I plan to release this to the great and good public. And I want this to compete with other things. So I'm very glad our discussion goes a hell of a lot longer, like into radial menus, which I cannot implement now. That is what we have to do. So imagine a basic scenario. And this is primarily for Brandel's colleague at Apple, because I want them to understand what we're doing so they can help promote it, right? The key thing is that for me and you guys, because we talked about it and I'm very grateful, you kind of know what the different things are. So the notion now is you start someone and all they have is the normal write mode. And they click on outline. And then next to outline is the word sections. Sections seem to people understand means heading plus text, but it's described other places. You click on that. And all that happens, you see all those cards. Now, not everybody's going to write a Doug Engelbart length paper. So it
some
does
of us
actually
write longer things.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
question is how many headings you have and all of these things, right? So you have that in space to begin with. So I think before you bring in the defined concept, it's something else. Now, do you guys have any thoughts? As in, let's say you have a heading and all the text. What type of visual qualities we should use to differentiate those between each other, or anything along those lines?
I I think it really also depends on what you're trying to do, like whether you have a particular goal in mind. At some level, we've talked a little bit about the idea of first ratings and second ratings and things. And if you have no particular sort of goal, then there's no particular need to augment or modify those things because probably you should just get through the text. But if you have, to Tom's point, something that you want to do with learning about um, Foucault and labels, then there are some ways that you can kind of work with that. It's sort of the tension that people always had with how much of a hypertext do you construct in the context where you really do want somebody to get through one thing. How branching ought it actually be? And so setting up a set of sort of uh, toy goals as you sort of play with augmenting human intellect, I think would probably be a useful thing to do. And yeah, so if you want to find Joe, then that's one, but there might be ones like determining the relative scale of different parts of the text dealing with one thing versus others to sort of work out like, what has come true since Engelbart wrote it, what remains sort of unaddressed and things like that. So like starting from those, try to envision sort of sets of activities or to sort of enumerate the kinds of activities that the specific capabilities um, that you already have in the system can support. So I I haven't got enough of a sort of a vision for what I want um out of that paper at this point to be able to answer that question. But that's the process I would undertake to go about answering it.
Yes, and uh, one of the difficulties here is that we're now looking explicitly at authoring, not reading. So Doug's paper is a good and very bad example.
Right, yeah, yeah. You mentioned editing, and I was like, I don't know that I would feel like editing Doug's paper, but it makes sense if it's standing in as a partially completed text
But
or
you may want
something.
to annotate it.
Oh, don't you start giving me more work, Tom. Annotation is actually really, really important. We did with the Sloan towards the end look at annotations in a very different way. And now, when you have one chapter in front of you on a what we call it a floating tablet, let's call it that, right? The solution you currently have now is you click edit and it goes to the main right view and you go back. So you don't annotate. It just gives you a way to edit your real text. In your real text, you could do 2D annotations if you wanted to. But there's also the thing of if you choose to annotate it, then you annotate the heading, which is a possible thing as well. It's so weird to see your Brandle, moving Brandle with the background not moving in the same manner.
I was thinking that myself.
I was just moving to the bedroom so that it wasn't in the middle of the house.
No, that's cool. So the thing is, the annotations you can currently do spatially, when you select a defined concept, you can choose to hide it or like it. So that's the beginning of annotations. Those are really important because there's space management is crucial, right? I don't really need this, boom, delete or hide. That has to be quite quick. That works. To be able to write a proper annotation requires more thought, but it is really, really important for me to fight Ken Perlin in the positive and nice way. His statement of, he says he doesn't work in VR. He can't see why. So I see that as a fighting talk, right? So there's two aspects of that at least. The number one is it's got to be your own data in and out. That's solved. That's why I'm a slave to the Apple ecosystem with iCloud and everything, because I don't have to do anything for that. So that's done. And also it expands with the origami text and all of these things, because any spatial stuff we do is going to be part of the metadata. So Randall working outside of this ecosystem should be able to open it, read it, and do entirely cool things with it. So conceptually, it's done. And obviously there's a lot of more work to do. And then we get to this really difficult thing now. What the heck kind of cool, useful, unique interactions can there be, right? And one of them has to be getting to grips with it, which is partly interaction and partly visual, right? So I just want to, because it's you two, and intellectually I think we're quite close, I want to emphasize what I've managed to do that I'm kind of proud of. And that is the alignment and layout based on time or alphabetical. Alphabetical having numbers included as well, right? So that means that when Jeff Norris complained that the document and the things in space wasn't connected, that allowed me to put in the mental effort to make it possible. That's why we have the sections. And to be able to now take the sections and do a little, because I'm familiar with the toolbar, a little of this and that, and now they're horizontally laid out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is a really, really useful feeling. And I credit one person for that, and that's you, Brandel. The way that you did the mural, where you don't move in the room, but you move the whole damn thing. That's the kind of thing that I don't think it's possible to really think about before we're in the environment. You know, it is beyond Harry Potter or Minority Report. It really is. So that now works. So because I've been allowed to think modularly, there are no themes or locked in templates. If you want it like this, you want it like this, you want it like that, that is now super simple. But they are still rectangles. So Tom's suggestion here for how to make it more visual is 100% what I'm looking at now. The outline is one of them. I'm probably going to make sections look different from all the other notes because they are different, right? But the question for us obviously is also, what do we mean by different? What is functionally different? What kind of differences do we care about while we're working? And one of them is when you have a very long section and you can't tell Doug to please add some more headings, you could probably tell yourself, how do you deal with that? Or maybe you don't. Maybe and this, I think this will be fair. Maybe we say, when it goes over a certain amount of text, cut it. That's it. You really shouldn't have a chapter that long. I feel totally happy saying it, and I would very much like Doug Engelbart to agree or disagree with me, because obviously he loved to experiment with the media too.
Yeah, but now you're drifting into annotation at that point.
It's all annotation, all the way down.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those perennial problems with a text editor or a document creator or manager is how opinionated ought you be? Something that I've asked a bunch of people involved in email in the past is like, what what do you think about trying to help people write a good email? Um, and there are various things like Gmail having grammatical suggestions and other things like that. But in reality, the best email advice I ever got was keep it under 300 words and only ask one question at a time. Like only ask one question per email because otherwise people will forget it. And like that's a pretty opinionated set of things. But if you can build a tool that sort of centers on those, then there are very different consequences to having a free form kind of capability for email that doesn't presuppose any things like that. So I think to that end, it is valid to say like, no sections over so many words or whatever. And if somebody wants to make a section that is simply the previous one continued, then that's their choice. But what you're clearly doing with something is discouraging them from that kind of behavior and making and trying to encourage them to consider having more semantic handles effectively for what that piece is. And that's a lot like Bob Horn's perspective on structured text and the way that you have to have titles for every paragraph.
Yeah, I'm just writing notes here.
Which was phenomenally effective, yeah.
I assume you know Hypothesis.
Yeah, my old boss used to work there.
Yeah. Well, Frode, do you know Hypothesis?
Yeah, Dan Whaley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
In any case, yeah, that's the annotation tool. That's why I wanted to it, because that's the whole point of it. So one of the things I will say is that digital technology is all about customization. Once you start getting into fixed metaphors or anything like that, you might as well have a piece of paper or stacks of paper or a wall full of notes that you can then connect with red yarn or whatever. And so the less, I know you're reluctant to, when you say edit. And when I heard edit, I didn't think I was going to rewrite Doug Engelbart, but I was going to maybe put a paragraph here and say, oh yeah, I wrote about this aspect of it on July 7th, 2025 in this blog, and it's related to the overall concept and stream of thought that I'm working on, blah, 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 and then maybe be able to connect it back to my own stuff. That to me is where the real value lies, and the fact that I'm taking Doug's ideas and pulling them apart and looking at different bits and pieces and perspectives on it, and then putting them back together in a different way, contextually for 2026, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I do as a writer. And to me, that's the hardest part as far as, it's not hard. It's actually something I'm pretty good at, but it's the most complex part and stuff that I'm always sort of looking for the edges on. Okay, great. So Doug wrote about this, but what does Doug Engelbart and Michel Foucault have to do with each other? Right? How do those two things connect? Because that's a really interesting question to me. I would argue that Engelbart's essentially a constructivist at heart. Just didn't know what to call it at that point, but go ahead.
So you're raising a lot of
Yeah.
points. So first of all, the Doug paper is a demo. You're pretending you're Doug, so that's an issue.
Yeah.
But I have a few questions for you guys based on what we're talking about. They're going to sound like details, but I'm so grateful for your perspective. Number one, when you select something
hmm
in the old current style, if you have a white theme, they go black. What I'm trying to do now, you select something, and if you have a white theme, you have a black border. That's more elegant, right? Most likely, and vice versa. If you have a black theme, it gets a white line. Doesn't that make more sense?
Well,
It's less visually. Wow.
black on gray is awfully hard to read too.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
But yeah.
so the rendering of the vision in visionOS is really, really difficult. Black text and white, perfect. White text and black, perfect. Any other colors gets murky and horrible. It's one of the things I sent to the tech people, Randall. Anyway. So the only options you're gonna, yeah, it's really weird. I mean, if you have a dark mode that's a little bit beige, the text is unreadable. That's okay. I don't need to worry about that now. But
Have you
the key
considered
thing,
8-bit color, Randall?
right? So the thing is, if you have a dark one now, and that's what you like, when you then select it currently, it becomes white, right? I think that might be too stark. Some people, if they want black mode, that's what their eyes need. So that's why having it have a white line around it to show that it's selected, that's enough, right?
Oh yeah. I'm more concerned
Randall?
about being able to see the content. That's all.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. But the thing is, you were talking about the visual aspects, and it gets complex, and this is where I really need you guys' perspective. So you need to know whether something is selected or not. So there needs to be some sort of a visual indication. Currently, it's really stark. So let's say only a border changes. Now, to make the closed headings that are for sections as opposed to defined concepts to look different. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it depends a lot on. I should be able to define the concept.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's one of the key things that you can do that. But see, the thing is,
But I also might want to see how you define them.
no, but that's not what I mean, though. What I mean here is we're talking now very superficial, literally cosmetics. We're talking about how should these rectangles in space look different based on their characteristics as opposed to their state. So, for instance, the guys to demonstrate this new rendering engine, I spent so much time and money on this, it's crazy. So in the new rendering engine, which is much better, you can have an icon on, so they put star on it if you liked it. I think that is not useful for what we have now, so I took it off because it's your own stuff. You don't need to see that. If in a reading environment, maybe it's useful. So
I need to bow out for just a second. I'll be back in about 5 or 10 minutes because I got to say goodbye to my in-laws who are leaving. I'll be right back.
Okay. Bye, in-laws.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, well, so that's something we'll continue with, but more onto what you're talking about, Brandel, is a little bit about nesting, right? Because right now the system doesn't care whether it's a level 1, 2, 3 heading, whether it's just a heading or whether it's a huge section. Do you have any thoughts on how that should be dealt with?
Yeah, so I it's hard to I don't know enough about writing documents because I don't do it much. I actually like so what I would want at the highest level to work on a document editor, on an authoring tool, is to collect a series of practices and priorities in order to construct a set of hypotheses about what kinds of sort of mental action somebody needs to undertake in order to be able to do something, um, and to sort of investigate how they assemble materials and references, and how they kind of identify, the body of text. And I also think that it is really interesting to think about like what might be the what might be the authoring environment for a I mean, what is a paper is 10,000 words at its outside normally. A lot of the time, the sort of academic papers as presented are somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000. I don't know, just making up numbers. But yeah, like if what you wanted to do is build a tool for writing academic papers, then sort of understanding the sets of the formalisms that obtain, and understand, like if you wanted something to look like a paper, then that's a different thing as well in terms of being able to have a simultaneous view of all of the different constituent parts of it. So being able to understand, if I add this, then it adds this to the bibliography. It might have this sort of approximate scale of obligations to the abstract. Like if I use this method, then it would require this much in the middle, this kind of citation at the end, and maybe this size sentence. And so then you can start sort of conceiving of all of those pieces. I don't know, like I rarely take the level of care and attention that is kind of requisite for something like this. I'm uh, uh, fairly slapdash, I guess I would say. But I'm also pretty social in terms of my iteration. And so, those are a number of kind of constraints that you could apply. And the social aspect is a really interesting one to think about. Like, even if it's asynchronous social, like how can you how can you construct release notes? Like if you want to get, one of the things that we do at work a lot is review and re-review. And so certainly in WWDC sessions, there are definitely weekly, but almost daily sessions toward the end of a session of the construction of a video. And so it's pretty critical for people to say, like, we actually do run the hood through the whole damn thing, but we release note it up top to say, like, okay, so I have revised a little bit about the transition from this section to that section. And I don't have the diagrams here yet. So, we do need them. I know that. It's not that I should be getting off scot-free for not having them yet, but that is not, if you're going to spend all of your feedback on that, then that's not super relevant. So yeah, like, I think that there are a series of choices that you could make. I take Tom's point that, that one should have freedom, but I also think that, like, in order to that it may be really constructive and instructive to pick a lane and go, like, well, if this is for a 2,000 to 5,000 word academic paper in broadly these kinds of domains, then there are a number of implicit sort of obligations and formalisms that people are likely to kind of follow. So yeah, hopefully that's a useful enough answer of about those things.
Those are fighting words, also very good. Author per Mac. Sorry, Tom, just hold your fire just for a little bit.
Yeah.
Author for Mac generally does what a university student would need. So in terms of my professional trying to make a little bit of an income, that's done. Now, again, this year I have submitted an article to a paper or article, whatever you want to call it, to ACM Hypertext. And there's two options to do that, either through a Word template that is a mess or through LaTeX. LaTeX is an absolutely horrendous weight on the intellectual capacity of humanity. I have access to Mark Anderson, and even him, with his deep knowledge of it, there are so many options and things. You basically have to program a document. It is absolutely insane, right? So what I want to do, Brandel, is serve people like you, right? The university people are kind of served by my systems already. When it comes to the XR stuff, yes, they should be able to write a paper and hand it in. But the reason I'm working on this origami text, which is basically EPUB, is partly the headache to create the cosmetic aspects of an academic paper is quite literally insane. It really is. That's not an insult. That's a description that even the people who do it, they think it's absolutely crazy. So we should develop Brandl level thought spaces. And then, of course, they may other uses than you, Brandl, because you said you don't need to polish at the end because you're not necessarily presenting it somewhere. That big jump to augment you rather than to follow around the paper is the whole point of this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, for me, yeah, so I do polish things, but what I don't polish is text. I tend to polish a presentation, so it ends up as a Keynote file. And it would be nice for that to be a little bit more, have a little bit more in the way of performance and dynamism. But you know, it's a prototype, or it's a prototype web page, or it's a Keynote, or it's in the past, it had been a blog post, but you know, since I've been at Apple last 12 years, I've written fewer of those. So yeah, like yeah,
Well,
but it would
Keynote
be
is
useful
what
for those things to be. Sorry.
I was just going to say. Keynote is one of the most elegant, powerful pieces of software I've ever come across.
It's pretty, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, a lot of people have very different relationships to it, depending on whether they like PowerPoint or Google Slides
I
or
use it
whatever.
as a
But
light graphics editor.
it's
Yeah.
actually really
Yeah.
surprisingly powerful for that. You know,
Yeah.
as is PowerPoint. You know, there was a couple of people many years ago. Was it PowerPoint or Excel? But I suspect they have largely the same capabilities. Was just recreating, you know, thing like basically using Keynote as Illustrator,
Right.
and you can get a surprising way through. I have Illustrator, and I've gotten people to buy me Illustrator, so I use it. But yeah, yeah. So
But Illustrator requires a certain level of commitment, even if you know what you're doing to do it. I
oh
can
yeah,
usually
yeah.
slap things out in Keynote so much faster.
Yeah,
So,
I also yeah, have bought several books, and
yeah.
have committed cumulatively
Right.
probably many months, if not a year or more, to simply learning how to do Illustrator in order to get away with it.
I
But no,
remember
back to
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Randall. Sorry.
no
Go ahead. No.
back to the back to what to produce then. You know, one thing that is relevant to me then, Frode, is being able to uh because one of the problems with a keynote is that it doesn't have much space for the rationale. There are notes that you can attach to it, and they don't necessarily, and they don't appear on the final presentation, so you can slap all kinds of things, but they're quite invasive in terms of the visual appearance of it, and the real estate of, I think you can put notes off of the keynote screen so that you can put them, you know, past the left or the right extreme of the pixel grid that is actually going to be displayed. But
There's a
relatively
note
little.
presenter notes thing that pops up on the
And there's
bottom.
also, so
Yeah.
presenter notes is what is going to be visible on the teleprompter
Yeah.
in the event that it's available as you're making a presentation. So it's a note. They're notes for the presenter as they're presenting. There are
Right.
sticky post-it notes that you can put on slides about the content that don't appear that are sort of for the purposes of producing the text, and you can put them on things, but they tend to default to being pretty large, which means that they're pretty invasive as a way of adding things. Sorry, go on, Frode.
Don't be sorry. This is one of the most exciting things I've heard in a very long time. So it's funny how we kind of come back to things, and they look a little bit different. So what I fantasized about when you talk now, to use my phone again. So here
Yeah.
is okay, for the sake of this discussion, here is a keynote slide in space. Here's the next one, and here's the next one. You can choose to view them like this or like that, right? That can be done already now, relatively easily, right? Now, what I've already thought about is behind the thing, let's say you have lots of citations up here, wherever you've chosen to have it. Select a citation, you can see which slide, section, whatever the heck this is, connects to. So you can say select all citations, and then you'll see where they go, and you can see the density of different citations in different parts. That's done. Now, what you're adding that's really exciting is, at least conceptually, you have this thing with stuff on it, and if you do an interaction, then there are explicit other nodes in space that become either visible or available for this. So instead of just being a close and open, it becomes close and open and cluster, maybe. How would you want? How would you want to? So let's say you've got a typical Brandl slide, all done, very polished. It's here, and you go through it. How would you yourself want to have that bit of extra? The rationale, etc.
Something that I do certainly, so I do a lot of illustrations, for example, and in order to arrive on an illustrative style, I tend to do a bad job of each of the things in contrasting styles in order to work out the sort of the common thread of the work that the pictures need to do. And so having that sort of collapsible mood board or a shelf, sort of a to be able to kind of have the elements that are sort of common thematically across all of my content is a useful thing to be able to kind of contrast and compare and hold them up. So having sort of sort of a knapsack inventory that I can kind of uh, uh, pull out fairly easily. Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, I was going to say that, getting back to something you said earlier as well, Brandel, and this gets back to what Frodo was saying, that this is an authoring tool, not a reading tool. Um, when I'm reading and when I'm authoring, I'm basically doing very similar things. I'm stitching together a web of ideas, and if I'm reading something and I go, oh, this sounds very much like the idea in this other book. And then this is an interesting way of thinking about this, and this makes an interesting connection. I'm as to steal a note from Tim Berners-Lee. I'm weaving a web, and but I mean that's what I'm doing when I'm writing, because now I've got all of the ideas and sources that I've got. Maybe it's something that's personal experience or something that I personally did, and maybe some of it's usually a combination of things. Like the one I'm working on right now is personal experience plus a movie quote plus Ivan Illich, and so it's like, but I'm smashing all that stuff together, and to be able to see that, to see, okay, here are all the things that are in the universe. Oh, I want to throw that up because I'm still collecting stuff, so I'd like to be able to throw that up on a board and on the side, like Brandel said, with sticky notes essentially. But then I say, okay, I want to use this, this, and this, but not this, and pull it into the document and then write with it. But I'm essentially, what I'm doing with the text is I'm connecting all those ideas together in order to hopefully come up with a coherent narrative. Same thing's true, by the way, when you're making an illustration, Brandel, because you're pulling ideas and graphics and other things that, okay, I need to pull all this together so this text becomes understandable visually. Or if you're coding, I need this subroutine, I need this subroutine, I need this subroutine, I need to put this all together in order to, then I need to stitch it together and make it do what I want to do, put my flavor on it, and therefore that's how I get my program. Those are all essentially the same activities. That's the activity of creation. I mean, we aren't creative, as your former boss. I don't know if he was ever actually your boss. Randall said, good artists copy and great artists steal, which he stole from Matisse. But it works. But the idea that anybody has a totally original thought anymore is no, it's an original compilation of other people's thinking. We're building on generations of thinking. And sometimes it helps to strip that away and start over from as bare bones as you can. But I think there's an absolute limit to that, as far as understanding how far you can break that stuff down. But that's always the case. And so this tool, if it's going to be effective, both as a reading tool, but also as a writing tool, it's got to do that web effect, and it's got to be able to visually tell the difference between artifacts on the side versus the central narrative.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the notion of context in here. I think I have something, Brandel, for what you said, but just to reflect on what you said there, Tom. The notion of context in here is that you work and you create a spatial arrangement of concepts that you find useful, like your master plan or whatever it is. And then as you create new projects, new documents, you paste these in as context. So no matter what category they are in a reliable position in space. And in author in the map, you can choose whether they're part of the interaction or not, which can be toggled easily. So you can have your stuff. Now, expanding on that, what I really would like you to be able to do is to have things nested, but visionOS doesn't allow me to develop ways to open other files other than through the open dialog. And that's just a current limitation, fair enough. But in order to have all your different elements, your different contexts, your different environments, Tom, that is important. Now, the stuff, Brandel, you're talking about, if you're looking at a document view rather than keynote view, you may call them endnotes, or basically endnotes, right? So that gets a little bit exciting. So whether you're thinking about keynote terms or document terms, in a sense, doesn't matter. But as you work, if you insert in there obviously we need a better term for it, but you insert a thing that is only when it's exported just a little superscript number or whatever, or it's at the bottom of the page, depending on the typesetting, that becomes that additional stuff, doesn't it? So if we then can have a means through which here's a chapter, a section, all the endnotes in there are understood by the system to be units of knowledge. So if you do an interaction, or maybe they're automatically on the side, nicely laid out, or behind, then we're getting into more of a hypertextual environment. But what we're pointing to is endnotes, which is, of course, 300 years old or something? That's kind of exciting to look at these different ways of where do you put the extra stuff?
I'm not sure I would go. This is something I fight with my students, actually, when they're building websites. They have this trained internal thing that says, I'm going to put all my citations at the bottom or something like, or I'll have a citation page. And I'm like, guys, the web doesn't work like that, because I need to know right next to the artifact, because the assumption is you've got a page. And on the web, you don't really have a page. You have an infinite canvas. I mean, you call them web pages, but they're not defined by 8.5 by 11 or A4 or whatever you want to call it. They're defined by how much you want to scroll, and and you can also go side to side, although very few people actually do that anymore. But that's a completely different language than what you would use for a text. I mean, on your text, I don't like books that have that have endnotes without footnotes, if you know what I mean, where they'll simply, they'll go on and on, but then you get to the end part and it says on page 264, I was referring to this and referring to, and without, because they don't want to clutter up the text. But as a reader, especially if they're directly quoting people or doing stuff like that, I need to know. I want to know what that is immediately. And one of the nice things about Kindle is I can click on it and have it pop up, right, immediately.
So the way
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, that's okay. The way that I'm dealing with that in author is citation display can be author date while you're authoring, as is common. You can also have initial and date, which is nice because sometimes if you have author date, the names will be spell checked and underlined red, which is kind of annoying. You can also have the see here that here's the title of the article, so you have that inline when you're writing. Also, when you go into the outline view, remember we have in addition to outline, we have overview that you saw, but we also have a citations one. that is only headings and what you've cited. So I completely agree that when you're reading and writing, you need to be able to toggle between reading plain, getting the information immediately. So if you here click on a citation, you get all the citation information immediately. And then when you, oh, for God's sake, yeah, export's going to cost money now because it's easier to charge for. So I have to pretend to do that. Randall, where's my button?
Your Apple Pay? I don't know.
it's supposed to be. That's weird.
But
You may not be able to do it
is
with
it
the
all-
test flight app.
Are you charging per export?
No. The thing is, I can't charge for new versions. The App Store doesn't allow that. So even if I put in a lot of work, then 5 years later, people will have the same the same app, and I don't. That's just not sustainable. So what it's going to be now is you can either purchase or subscribe. So if you purchase, then it's a one-off thing, and you have it forever. It's like £30. It's not a lot. Subscribe is a lot less, but that means you can use it while you're in university or whatever. And when you don't need it, you don't pay. But if you ever want to export rather than just open, you can, right? But let me see.
Makes sense.
Thanks.
I would assume you would have the absolute full version of anybody.
No, well, the thing is, I'm testing the purchase system, and now we
Okay.
saw that. But here's an export I've done earlier, and this is because of Mark Anderson. You see that little one? I double click on that, and it says what the source is. The scaling is a bit odd because you can also have the full abstract in there and all kinds of other stuff. And if you click on the document, depending on whether you have it or not, it'll open. So I completely agree with all of those issues. But when you go back to what Brandel was talking about in terms of extra stuff, doesn't it make sense that we treat the extra stuff as, it's a horrible phrase, endnotes, or either endnote, what's your footnote or endnote, right? They're irrelevant in a digital environment.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm just saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. But if we forget the terminology, and then we just, okay, because hang on, I'll do one.
They have a
final shift.
purpose. They were pre-web is what they are.
So
right?
look at this.
Yes and no. I do think, Tom, that the function of a footnote or an endnote is they do two things. They allow you to provide supplementary information without breaking the flow of the initial document.
Right.
But they also allow you to array and align those multiplicity of sources against each other in order to be able to come up with that kind of separate view. What I definitely believe is that by virtue of a digital document having the ability to arrange itself, it should be able to opportunistically sort of focus on those specific things.
Right.
But I do think that, the answer is not to just put all of the stuff in situ, and that there are very different sort of psychological consequences to, for example, even just expanding out a single place. There was a really entertaining talk that Bill Buxton did about ubiety, which is a word that neither he nor I had ever heard before until he was looking in the dictionary for it, but a physical dictionary for ubiquity, and saw ubiety after it, or before it, I guess. And I found that really amusing because it shows that the sort of the forced proximity of some of the earlier sort of traditional ways of jamming related information together still have their benefits, in the same way that if you search for something, you don't get the landscape of it.
In some ways, that's
so
what I'm trying to recapture because, I think of it as in the context of a library. I've actually written entire articles about books that were next to the book I was actually looking for, just like what you just described, in the sense that I went to the shelf and I was looking for a particular book, and then I saw this one right next to it, and I was like, oh, that looks really interesting. I'd never seen this book before. I wouldn't even know to look for it, except for the fact that it was in proximity to the book that I was looking for. I would not have found it. And so one of the key things that I'm trying to do with the Knowledge Navigator is to map out those kind of serendipitous proximities that I'm not expecting, but that often give me insight and uh, inspiration to explore a new pathway. And that's really one of the things that really excites me about AI sometimes is that I do get that in the sense that I'm able to throw ideas. I had an entire conversation with AI over the weekend about certification with grades and standardized testing and all this stuff. And I got a lot of extraneous information, which is feeds directly back into stuff I'm working on elsewhere. And that was just sort of an off the cuff thing because I'd seen something on PBS and I'm like, how does this guy get off talking about this way? And I had to figure that out. And that I did ultimately. But the conversation itself was very serendipitous too. And again,
Yeah.
to me, it's the unexpected.
So Tom,
Yeah.
on the side of it, but let me just show you three different things. Here is an endnote,
Yeah.
right? So just for the sake of our conversation, of course, we all know this. An endnote is a thing that is expected to be exported to the end reader, right? Here is an inline note. This is for the author privately. But if you decide you want to export it, you can click down here to convert it to an endnote. But it is for yourself. It's like, I'm not really sure. Maybe I should go back to it. It's all over the place. This is completely different. This is the, oops, let me not destroy this, even though it's a test document, contract. So this takes the text and gives it two little chevrons, right? The point of that is while you're writing, I'm done with that. I don't want to look at it. I need to jump around other things. But when you export or click on it, it comes right back. So there are different ways to write beyond the screen. A link in the TED sense and the Doug sense has all kinds of things, implicit, explicit, all of that stuff. In terms of the web, a link is just an address, right? So we are looking at how can we have a conceptual and visual hierarchy of what we're communicating. This is the top level or whatever. But then we've got these other things to say. So I think EndNote, bad term, but functionally, if it can have a space in space, so to speak, might be interesting.
It's like a call out box on an illustration.
Exactly, yes.
So the question I have for you is you just went through a list of features in Author, which I think actually break it down quite well. How do you express that visually? Could you convert that into a visual set of metaphors that you could then put into the vision, into an XR space in a way that distinguishes between those different categories you've got and different views, outline view versus summary view, et cetera, et cetera. That is, I think, where my primary complaint with Author is that it is basically expressing a three-dimensional view of writing in a two-dimensional space. And in some ways, because the things you can do with it are really interesting. It's just that flipping between the two as I'm writing is, for me at least, and again, I can only speak for my own crazy brain when it comes to writing. Uh, um, the yeah, for me at least, that's hard to do. Oh, Brendel's leaving. Sorry, Brendel. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
all right. Well,
Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying there?
no, I don't, because I'd like you to define. You're obviously talking about author for visionOS, not author
No,
for
I'm talking
Mac.
about Author on the Mac.
Well, author on the Mac is
Yeah.
constrained to a flat display, obviously.
Yeah. I understand why it works the way that it does. I think in some ways, and I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that, but I am saying sometimes I feel like the features you put into it are constrained by the medium in a way that make it hard for someone operating in the old medium, which, pieces of paper, screens, whatever, are to navigate. I mean, it's one thing to do it intellectually; it's another thing to do it instinctively. And that's the thing. That's where I get the when I start jumping as a writer, I'm trying to concentrate all of my intellectual energy on the writing. And if I have to then turn off that and spend time with the spend my intellectual energy on the tool, I get really frustrated with that.
No, of
And
course. Yeah.
and one of the things I really love right now with AI is that I can literally jump from one chat box to another, and I'm still thinking intellectually. I'm still asking those questions in my head, and I can just okay, let's try this, let's try that. Occasionally I get frustrated, particularly when I'm trying to get it to generate graphics, because it won't do what I want it to do. But then I start fighting with the tool, and I'm out of the space, and that's out of the flow. And that to me is a big fail, which is why I tend to do the visual stuff as a separate workflow, just because I don't want to lose it from the writing. Sometimes I'll get an idea and I'll put a note. I'd like a picture that shows this kind of thing. But in terms of the writing itself, yeah, I want to be able to. I mean, these days I'm writing more and more in Google Docs just because I can jump from one device to another very easily, and I can be dictating in my phone 1 minute, come home and type stuff on the computer the next, and I still have I'm working off the same document, and that to me is really useful. And so I can entertain my good moments of writing when they happen, as opposed to somehow having to save it up. But yeah, so to me, that real power there, though, as an authoring tool, is can you make those textual limitations? Can you break those textual limitations in a visual environment? That's your homework for the week. Call your
Yeah, no,
developers in.
no, obviously that's what I'm doing, but
Yeah,
I mean, it's difficult to have these conversations in the community when there is very little headset use in the community.
yeah,
So when I show you, I can move it this way, I can move it that way. Obviously, I see my own videos because I have to edit them, so I can see it doesn't really show the depth of it. But I do think we need to push on the visualization. So I have some things out of today that I'm going to try to implement for next week. And also the notion of endnotes, obviously we should find a better name, I think is really provocative because endnotes in a traditional document is really, no, even worse, endnotes in a hypertext document is just a hypertext link.
mm-hmm.
And it takes you away from where you are unless you do command click and it's another tab or whatever.
Yeah.
So to be able to have a useful way where the system understands the difference between your main stuff
Yeah.
and your added stuff.
So I'm looking for a book
Which
that
one?
Ted Nelson actually suggested in one of his videos. I'm trying because he pointed it out as a way of showing the what did I do with that thing? I pulled it out just the other day. This is the problem with books. I'd like to be able to snap my finger and have it appear in front of me. See? That is a useful thing. That's the number one limitation of my of linear text and bookcases and whatnot. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's under every other book I've got. It's the Open Collaboration Encyclopedia, and Nelson likes it because it's literally got annotations and everything on the same. It's the same on the page together.
Right.
Okay, and the fact that you can these is your annotation. These are your endnotes.
Yeah,
He likes it
no,
because they're visual.
they're footnotes in the margin. Yeah.
Well, no, they're endnotes because they're explaining terms and things that are in the text. They're not referencing things.
No, but they're still functionally footnotes. Footnotes are not references. They are just explaining a bit in the text.
Yeah, I mean, as Brandel said, they have two different potential purposes, but what I understand when you're talking about endnotes versus footnotes, to me, that says a footnote is a reference back to another piece. It's a connection outside the
I think
piece.
of that as just being a citation, but okay.
Yeah.
Of course, it can be in a citation.
It can be in a citation as well. Whereas,
Yeah.
and I look at endnotes, it's just in the traditional sense, it's just a different way of formatting footnotes. You don't want to put them on the bottom of the page, you put them at the end of the book.
Yes.
But
Endnotes and
you have a
footnotes.
different definition,
No, no, no,
right?
no. I think it's
So
the
yeah.
same. Let me say it back to you. A
Hmm.
citation is something that says, go read another document. This is the
Hmm.
one we're talking about. And endnotes is a number, a letter, or whatever that refers something at the end of the document.
Hmm.
A footnote is an indication of something that says, go read at the bottom of this page. So digitally, I feel that endnotes and footnotes are functionally the same because we have the option where they should be shown. So in the reader example you saw a citation, but it could also have been an endnote. You can double click, it pops up, and then it goes away. So it's there at demand, not on the side. But
Hmm.
I think what the three of us are all talking about is it would be very interesting if you have a piece of knowledge, let's call it a page for the sake of simplicity, or a chapter or a section or whatever, where there's extra bits of stuff.
Hmm.
So how to show it, but also, very importantly for me, how to call it forth.
So I think the word you're looking for, though, is I would go away from the vocabulary of endnotes and footnotes because that to me, those are implicit. The reason the fact that we have a confusion between the two is again fundamentally a question of putting things on paper.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. No,
and
I agree with that, all of that.
there's no clear way, there's no good way to do that. As you know, I don't like books that are half footnotes at the bottom of the page either. That's just too much, you know.
But what should we call it in the digital world then?
So I was thinking call out boxes. I mean, a call out because I think that's a
Oh,
better way of saying it. And that can be both a visual call out. In other words, it could be a diagram or something, but it could also be a block of text.
yeah, but that implies that it's visible at all times, right?
No, or pop up. I mean, that's a bad word in in the digital world,
No,
but
no, no.
you know,
Well, there needs to be the means for the user to add some extra text, or yeah, let's
hmm
just and a means for forget the reader for a moment, for the
yeah,
author then to choose when to see that extra stuff while in spatial. I mean, conceptually, there could be at the back of the little thing hanging in space.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe even the horrible thing of a button.
I mean, why do you need a button? You could just mouse over or whatever
Mouse over what?
the text, and it pops up or something like that. Aside, info box, panel or card, sidebar, pull quote, inset, text box.
Yeah, those are different things. But the point is that you have in front of you a it's limited space, whether you're on a traditional framed and
Yeah, yeah,
flat, medium, or big. So you need a way to, because the whole point of an endnote is you don't want it there all the time. Otherwise, it would be just plain text,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So you need,
But I mean, I can see where I would want to, as I'm going through and I make those notes, but then I'm going back and I'm editing, and I should be able to go over and then have those, and maybe there's a little marker or something that I can select and pop up that block of text where I put a note to myself, hey, fill this out a little bit more,
yeah.
or
I mean, that's how it works in most word processors, including
yeah,
Author. You just click on it, it pops up. But
yeah,
I'm thinking if you have a chapter bar, a section, to be able to
yeah,
see all of them somehow pointing to different things.
yeah. So in a sense, you know, when you highlight things in Kindle, it creates that separate um highlight box or that separate, you know, what is it, whatever they call it. But you can look at that box all by itself and just do all the notes. You can even export that part. And I've done that for books that I've annotated the heck out of, because then I can just go through really quickly and skim it a lot quicker just by looking at my notes or the highlights. And so, can we use that? Can we make that even better in a visual sense?
Yeah, I think we can, but my concern now is how to show and hide them.
Right. So another one that comes up here is call out block. That might actually, that actually sounds, of all the terms I'm seeing here, I had it do me a
No,
thesaurus thing. Yeah.
but call out boxes and all of that is
Block,
at
not
least
box, not box,
no, but
block.
no, but
Yeah.
all of those things are at
Yeah.
least very strongly print media. Here's the thing on the page you need to look at.
Yeah. Maybe we
Anyway,
just have to.
the terminology can come later, but this was interesting to start thinking about.
Transclusionary artifact.
Yeah, no, of course it's not that, but is there any TED language we could use?
The point I'm trying to make here is when Ted ran into things that were problematic from a conceptual perspective, he created a word for it, intertwingling and transclusion and things like that. Why can't we do that? Because we're not Ted, I know.
So I'm asking Claude here, what might Ted Nelson call a digital endnote? So now Claude is reading up on Xanadu and so on. So let's see. Claude, you don't disappoint. Nelson would probably reject the premise entirely.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I almost could see that one coming.
I'm writing a different query now.
You remember that scene in Lo and Behold where he's talking about as a child running his fingers through the water and having it go around and he's envisioning the water as parting and then coming back together, but not quite the same.
Oh yeah, of course, yes.
And making the metaphor of information with that. And I think the reason he would reject the idea of an end note is because he would say, well, there is no end, so how are you going to note? And the problem with the way you're using end note is it doesn't come at the end necessarily. It comes at the comes in line, the inline note.
No, I have inline notes as well. That's different. Inline notes is for yourself, so that's a note. But okay, so now I said, what might he or Doug call a link to something which is explanatory, in effect an endnote, but hidden until called forth? Stretch text. That's not exactly what we're talking about, but it's very... So Engelbart would refer to it as view control, level of detail visible, unclip or unclip levels, statement at a lower structural level. Of course, what we're using here is furl and unfurl. That's Brandel's term.
One of the things I've often talked about that I find again is a limitation of a concept mapping is that it's still operating in a two-dimensional space. And sometimes I want to see the turtles all the way down aspect of any piece of information. So, I want to be able to go across the level, but also do 3D chess kind of moves down layers of graphics. And one of the things I discovered I could do with Miro, which was kind of fun, was that I actually have a resume in Miro that is a visual resume, but it's actually a nested set of visual resumes because in Miro you can actually link to another Miro. And so I was using that as a way of going, okay, here's the basic plane. If you want to just get a quick overview of who Tom Hames is, but then if you want to see specifically what he's done in this area, click here, and it gives you a completely different graph that's only that area, right? And so then a sense that I was trying to communicate as quickly and efficiently as possible the complexity and intertwingledness of my background at the same time. That's always been a real challenge for me as I'm talking to people on the outside. They're like, "What? You're a photographer? What are you? You know, you're a teacher. You're a technologist. I mean, what are you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm Tom. I do what I do." Um, and that's, I think, is a common issue, especially among those of us who have, including you, who have our fingers in a lot of different pots. And but how would you describe yourself? That's an interesting idea, though. By the way, why don't you, as a project, make a resume of Froda in VR space that is satisfying to you? Because I've never seen a resume of me that I liked. You know.
Yeah, no, that's an issue. So we have a few interesting terms here. One is tuck, as in
Mm-hmm.
tucked away. Because in origami, a tuck is a fold that's structurally part of the sheet, but hidden inside the form until you open it. Then there is gloss, which of course, this is a gloss, but it's not a glossary. Then there is scholium, plural scholia, the ancient Greek term for exactly this relationship, a bound commentary on a specific passage written by later hand. Why not later hand? Tuck is interesting. Gloss. I think gloss is probably it. Anyway, something to think about. And I should have something much more complete next week to kick our discussion along. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's an accordion. It's a
Yeah.
Mad
I'll think about
Magazine
it.
used to have this thing called a fold-in,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Which is the opposite in a sense. You're creating a different narrative by eliminating part of the narrative as opposed to expanding it. So we need it's fold out. How about a fold out? And we have those
Well,
in books, right? You have a fold out illustration of the ship in the middle of the book so that you can see the whole thing.
I will think about that. And now I've got to
Yeah.
make dinner for the family.
Okay.
Thank you
Well,
very much.
enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you next week.
Look forward. Thank you,
Take
Tom.
care. Bye.
Bye bye.